Welcome to the second instalment of our three-part video series. My name is Stephen Edwards. I'm a partner in the Recovery Solutions team at Crowe, and I'm a licensed insolvency practitioner. Today, we'll be discussing the work we do to rescue a business that is suffering with financial difficulties. In the first part of our video series, we talked about informal processes. This is about formal processes, and the final part will be in relation to winding down and liquidation processes. I'm here with Vince Green. Vince is also a partner and is licensed insolvency practitioner here at Crowe. In Recovery Solutions, and as licensed insolvency practitioners, we deal and help our clients with restructuring, recovery and insolvency. Vince, when is it appropriate to use an administration process?
Well, the administration, of course, is a formal insolvency process, and its intention is to protect the company from its creditors and to also rescue that business in its entirety or parts of the business and sell that as a going concern. So there's always an intention of the administration to increase the returns in company's creditors and hopefully to find a better outcome than liquidation. Now, administration as a procedure typically assumes that there's a viable business there that can be rescued and hopefully sold to a third party. When a business is sold by an administrator, the jobs of employees hopefully can be saved, mostly saved, and hopefully the business will transfer those employees onto 2P and they will go across to the purchaser.
Okay.
So, Stephen, you recently dealt with administration of a company in the care sector. Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, indeed. The company was coming under this increasing financial pressure, and it didn't have the money to deal with its liabilities, but that was some time into the future from when we were first instructed. So when we first met with the directors, we were looking at the informal options rather than the formal insolvency options. So we were looking at consolidation of loans, and also trying to find new funding for that business. However, during that process, the company ran out of money and it wasn't able to pay its employees at month end. So to deal with that, we were appointed as administrators, so it converted from an informal process to a formal process. The company itself owned a quite substantial freehold property that it couldn't properly monetize. So as part of the administration, we dealt with the people that were in the company's care, found alternative premises for them, but we wound down the affairs of the business and dealt with the sale of the property, and that was at the height of the pandemic. That took some time to get us there, but we sold the property for a substantial sum. As part of the administration process, we were able to repay the company's creditors in full plus interest, and because there was a surplus, we were able to hand back the company to the directors, and they, whilst the business has changed, they've been able to pick up the business and run it going forward, and it's not encumbered by the history of that business or its old liabilities, which have now been settled.
That's a great outcome, of course.
Indeed. Vince, you've recently acted as administrator for a company that will also be handed back to directors, haven't you? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. It's delightful to work with directors to find that outcome, of course, and they're very pleased with the way that's going ahead. It was a situation that a company owned a hotel in central London that reached an impasse with the landlord, mostly because of COVID, like so many businesses in the hospitality sector, and they ended up owing considerable amounts of rent. They had, prior to our involvement, tried to negotiate with the landlord, but the landlord, unfortunately, in this instance, didn't take a commercial view. So they approached us, and we went through the various options, as we do, and we discussed the administration as a process. We discussed CVA, and even the informal approach in dealing with the landlord. The landlord, again, wasn't taking a commercial view. We suggested a CVA, but of course that wouldn't work because they were the majority creditor, and the company ended up going into administration. Now, the purpose of the administration was to keep the hotel trading with employment being secured, And we've traded that for just under a year now, and we've made a nice profit. And through us being very tenacious and quite determined, of course, that we've managed to negotiate with the landlord a satisfactory outcome. The landlord will get a negotiated sum in settlement. All creditors are being paid in full, and we're about to make applications to court, and the company and the business will be handed back to the directors. A very satisfactory outcome.
That's a great outcome indeed.
So, Stephen, there are different ways, of course, to save a business, which may include pre-packed administration. They're useful business rescue tools, aren't they?
They are indeed. A pre-pack administration is something that can be implemented when you have a business that is it's a viable one, and you know that there are buyers out there. But what you're able to do in a pre-package administration is to market the business so that it's ready to be sold on the day that you're appointed as administrator. So the marketing process is carried out a few weeks prior to your appointment. But again, it can be used where there's issues with trading that business and administration, and you may well lose the value of that business if you take that step. So it's all about preserving the value of that business, preserving the value to creditors, and also about saving that business and jobs. With an administration, there's always got to be a purpose to it. So there's a waterfall of different purposes that we have to be satisfied that administration can meet. But the whole purpose is to keep a business going, if that's at all possible. And again, it's a very satisfying side of the work that we do, but to walk away after a limited period of involvement, knowing that people's jobs are saved. And we've seen that the director through that process and helped them accordingly. Vince, you mentioned a CVA a moment ago. That's another process that can be used for rescue purposes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, the process, as you say, is a company voluntary arrangement, and we both know that's generally described now as a CVA, abbreviated as CVA. It's essentially a negotiated settlement between a company and its creditors where the company has financial difficulties and is insolvent. So a CVA can be used to pay creditors over a period of time, but of course we need 75% of the creditors, the voting creditors, to actually approve the process. If that's successful, then the company continues to trade under the supervision of the insolvency practitioner, and hopefully to trade out of its difficulties, giving a better return to its creditors, and at the end of the CVA is handed back. So the director really should put themselves in the shoes of their creditors when considering their proposal they're going to make to creditors, and ask themselves whether that outcome would be acceptable to them. And also, it's important for us to actually look at the proposal, particularly trading outcome, trade projections, to make sure that it's credible, that there's a real reason why the business has been suffering losses and has negative cash flow that are actually going to change. So they're credible to those that are actually owed the money going forward. So a CVA can also be used as part of the restructuring tool, and we mentioned in an earlier series about looking at the payment of rent or negotiating with landlords. That of course can be used for that purpose. The problem with CVA, of course, is the change in status of its creditors. As we both know, HMRC are now secondary preferential creditor, and it just changes the way the creditors can vote.
Okay, and I suppose that then runs through to how creditors are paying out under a CVA as well.
It does, and in those circumstances, they're described, of course, as unsecured creditors. It may be less attractive to them.
So administrations and CVAs exist to rescue a business, and that business is of course in financial distress. For a director, there are challenges to overcome, but they need to keep their employees engaged. They need to keep their suppliers on side just so that the business can continue to be maintained. The main benefit of these processes is that they keep the business operational, and they always have the intention of increasing the final return to creditors over and above what that would be in a liquidation or a closed down scenario. In a administration, if the business can be sold, then that business survives, and also so do the jobs. Administrations of CVAs are both very complex matters, and they require detailed discussions on the appropriateness and whether they would work for one company over another. What we're able to do at Crow is to advise on the best course of action, depending on the circumstances of that particular company, and provide you with practical steps to ensure that all measures are being appropriately dealt with, and also to provide you with advice so that you know that you're not overstepping the mark when it comes down to how you deal with the company's affairs at that stage, so therefore you're putting yourself at risk of personal claim. We hope that this video has been informative and provides an insight into the work that insolvency practitioners do to help businesses that are in financial distress. We look forward to you joining us for our final instalment of our video series, which will look at liquidations, and that's both on an insolvent and solvent basis. Thank you.
Thank you.